Hello, welcome to Bored and Confused, where I review shows based on two criteria. One, was I bored? Two, was I confused? Today's show is Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, one of the greatest American plays ever written. Now, before I jump into this amazing play, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me see more theater, make more videos, and start the discussion so that we can talk about theater, which we all love, right? Okay, so what did I know about Death of a Salesman going in? I've read this play several times. I've seen productions of it. I believe I saw the Brian Dennehy production. It's either that or I had a reoccurring nightmare for many years that I was understudying Bernard, and then the stage manager came to me and said, "You're not going on for Bernard, you're going on for Biff." And Brian Dennehy was playing Willy Loman, and I was standing in the wings looking at this big guy about to go on, and I knew none of the lines. One of those actor nightmares. Anyhow, that has nothing to do with this version of the play. Well, maybe it does, in that it does feel a little bit like a nightmare, this play, in a good way. So let's talk a little bit about the history of this show. This show premiered on Broadway on February 10th, 1949. Arthur Miller said that he wrote the first act in one sitting in one day, which is astonishing. It just came to him. And the play was originally directed by Elia Kazan and starred Lee J. Cobb as Willy Loman. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It won the Best Tony Award. And the character of Willy Loman has kind of become one of these legendary challenges for actors to overcome. And actors such as George C. Scott, Dustin Hoffman, Brian Dennehy, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Wendell Pierce, and now Nathan Lane is stepping into the worn-out shoes of Willy Loman, the titular salesman. What's interesting about this production is that Joe Mantello, one of the greatest living directors, really dove into the archives of the process that Arthur Miller went through writing this play and read some old scripts and so ideas and used that to kind of get a better understanding of the play. And as we'll get into, that research led to some interesting and notable choices. So what is Death of a Salesman about? Well, Arthur Miller himself said it's a tragedy about a man who gives his life or sells his life in pursuit of the American dream. And essentially, the place begins with Willy Loman coming home. He's in his 60s, he's worn down, he's the salesman who's been working for 35 years, and he's starting to have these mental issues that make it impossible for him to stay on the road and drive for these long hours. We learned that he's only working on commission now, that the company that he's worked for 35 years is trying to kick him to the curb. He can't afford to pay all his bills. His sons, who had such great promise at a young age, have turned out, one is the eldest, Biff, is a wanderer and doesn't really have any drive in his life. And similarly, the youngest, Happy, is a philanderer who is holding down an okay job, but really seems to just be about having a good time. And then the holding it all together is Linda, the dedicated life who loves Willy so fiercely. And looming over all this is the idea, which is planted very early, that Willy may be considering suicide. Linda has found this rubber hose down in the basement that could be used for him to kill himself. I'm not exactly sure how, but that is what looms over this whole play, is Willy's deteriorating mental capacity and the fear that the family has is that he will harm himself. All right, let's get into this. The set is designed by Chloe Lamfort, and she's created what looks like a dilapidated garage with these crumbling columns, and it's dusty, and there's a few chairs and a table and a big garage door at the back of the stage that then rises, and this old car, vintage car, drives in with Willy inside. I am someone who prefers realistic sets. This is not a realistic set. It took me a little bit of time to adjust, but this set allows us to really focus on the acting, and with this fine cast of actors that I will get into, I was happy to do that. And this bold choice with the set does not interfere with the text as far as I'm concerned. So I accepted it. It's anachronistic not only in these columns in this decaying, dusty garage, but also the car itself is like a 1963 Chevrolet, I don't know my cars, but it's not a Studebaker, which is what is referred to in the play. And I guess this is just to show that time is not solid in this world, as we learn because we have flashbacks. The lighting by Jack Knowles is really beautiful. It's very harsh and stark in what is the modern time of like the early 50s or 1949 when it was written. And then we have these flashbacks. The lighting is very warm and nostalgic in that way. So I thought the lighting was very effective. Now, one of the most interesting choices that Mantello has made is in the script, the older Biff and Happy, who are around 30 years old, play their younger selves in these flashbacks that this is one reason the play is so cool, is that Willy's fragmented mind, he will be in a scene with someone, but then his mind is taking him back, and it kind of blurs the line of what's real and what's in the past. And it just moves in and out of it so seamlessly that we really get the feeling of his mind deteriorating. And so in what Mantello has done differently is he saw in Miller's earlier manuscripts that he had considered casting a young Biff and Happy and an older Biff and Happy and having two sets of actors. But when the show eventually premiered on Broadway, probably because the producer might have said, yeah, let's not do that because that'll make me have to get 3 more actors because also young Bernard. But Mantello and I guess Scott Rudin, who we'll talk about in a second, decided that it was worth the expense to have young actors. So that is an unusual version of this play. I thought it was nice in that it made us really felt like we were in Willy's memory, because we see Nathan Lane as Willy Loman not changing, but everything around him is changing. These younger actors come in, so we really get that sense. It feels much more palpable, this sense of remembering the past. We don't have to say, oh, this 30-year-old man is now 18. So that is easier as an audience for us to accept. I did feel, though, that the younger guys, it took me a second to really connect them to Biff and Happy. I don't know, especially Biff, I don't know if he really was capturing the mannerisms and the speaking pattern of the older Biff. So I kind of had to go oh, he's the shorter one, and to really lock in which one was Biff and which one was Happy. Which for the older guys, no problem. They established themselves so clearly in their very first scene. Before I get into the performances, I want to address the elephant in the room, and that is that Scott Rudin this is his return as a producer on Broadway. He did do Bear Ridge Road, also with Laurie Metcalf, in the fall, but he was a co-producer on that. And now he's back as a full producer. In 2021, he'd stepped away from Broadway for a few years after a Hollywood report came out that said that he was abusive to his staff, in actually sending one of his staff members, a young man, to the hospital after smashing his hand with a computer. Scary stuff. So some people may not want to go see this show because Scott Rudin is associated with it, and I completely understand that. I chose to review the show because I want to review everything on Broadway. I want to let you know what's going on, and then you can decide whether you want to buy a ticket or not. If it makes you feel better, I did not buy a ticket. I did not get press tickets either. I had a friend who I called and was able to see the show from the back of the orchestra. All right, so let's talk about the performances as I experienced them from the back of the orchestra. And the Winter Garden, my positive and negatives are going to jump around here because they're kind of intertwined. So I think the Winter Garden is too big of a theater for this play. This is a very intimate play, even though it does have a fairly large cast, and 3 people larger even now with Mantello's, including the young versions of Biff, Happy, and Bernard. But the Winter Garden to me is a musical house. It is so wide, and I do appreciate that Mantello did do a nice thing, being aware of the space. He does keep the staging center and downstage, which means that the seats on the far ends makes it so you can still see the action, as far as I can tell. I was in the back of the orchestra. It goes all the way back to row V. So not really being able to see their faces like I would like to. So I just wish it was in a smaller theater. Let's talk about the acting here. Let's talk about the man of the hour, Nathan Lane, who's playing Willy Loman. I know that Nathan has wanted to play this for many years. He's been working on this for probably 10 years trying to play this role. So I'm happy that he was finally able to make it happen. I feel like there's 2 kinds of actors. You have actors who disappear into the parts, people like Meryl Streep or Gary Oldman, who can be in 10 different movies and you don't even realize it's the same actor. And then you've got actors who have a persona when they're performing, and that persona is always evident on the stage. And I feel that Nathan Lane definitely fits in that category, and Laurie Metcalf a little less so. But I feel Laurie Metcalf, when I see her in interviews where I see who she is and I see her on stage, it's Laurie Metcalf. She's not disappearing. And with this direction, Laurie Metcalf has her straight brown hair. Her costumes, I don't think anything feels super period like 1949. She's never had her hair in rollers like they would back then. So these performances, you are seeing Nathan Lane as Willy Loman, and that does take some adjustment. Nathan always feels like there's Nathan Lane in real life, and then there's Nathan Lane on stage. And those are different personas. Whereas I feel Laurie Metcalf in real life and Laurie Metcalf on stage, the persona isn't so different. And I think because the Nathan-isms are so strong, every so often as you're watching this performance, he does a Nathan-ism and you're pulled out a little bit and you're like, oh, Nathan Lane is playing Willy Loman. Now, I think his performance is great, but this is just something I notice. It's just a comment. I am fine with actors not disappearing into roles because I just feel like they're two different approaches. And so Nathan Lane is bringing Nathan Lane to this role just as Laurie Metcalf is bringing Laurie Metcalf to this. Let me tell you, she doesn't need to disappear into a role because I love Laurie Metcalf and everything I've seen her on. I've seen her in probably maybe a dozen shows now. She is never disappointing to me, and she is the greatest thing, in my opinion, in this show. And you know, her character of Linda is what holds the family together. Laurie Metcalf as an actor is also what is holding these four great actors together. The scenes with all four Lomans in it are terrific. They are so good. And I think it really is because Linda is just pulling them all together. And they're all doing such great work. We're really off the cuff now. So let's talk a little bit about Christopher Abbott as Biff and Ben Ahlers as Happy. From the very first scene, I understood who these characters were. Biff is struggling. He feels that he wants to live up to this expectation that his father has had. He feels crushed that he's not been able to. Happy, just like his name, he's very positive. He's happy enough with his job. He doesn't seem to have great ambitions. But Biff has really, as the eldest, has all of his father's hopes and dreams have been placed on Biff, and he is not accomplishing them. So I loved both of these actors in these roles, immediately understood who the characters were, and I especially loved Christopher Abbott. And the reason why is I think it's difficult to feel sympathetic for a handsome white guy who was a football star. Everybody loved him. He was a little bit of kind of a jerk in high school. He wanted to copy Bernard's test papers, didn't want to do his homework, which is a plot point because it bites him in the ass. But it's hard to feel sympathy for someone who's just had things handed to them for their whole life. But Christopher Abbott's portrayal of Biff, he had me. I felt for the guy. I felt so bad for the guy, which is hard to do. Yeah, it really got me. And of course, back to Laurie Metcalf just tore me apart with her portrayal of Linda. I've already talked about Ben Ahlers as Happy. He was great. He just really embodied this role. He just hit that sweet spot of he's trying to have his freedom and yet fulfill his familial responsibilities, trying to support his brother, trying to make everyone happy. All of the other characters, K. Todd Freeman as Charlie, Michael Benjamin Washington as Bernard, were great. They cast that family as African-American family, which is interesting because then when we get to the moment when Willy refuses to accept work from Charlie, it layers in this thing of not only does he think he's better than Charlie, does he think he's better than Charlie because of a racial reason. So that was a nice little layer. Also, the memory of Uncle Ben, Willy's brother. This actor made a strong choice, Jonathan Cake. He played Uncle Ben as, now we only are seeing Uncle Ben as a memory, so that we don't know if that's the truth of the character or just how Willy Loman is remembering him, but he's almost sinister in his approach to this, which it was interesting, you know, and I thought, why not? It's not a huge role, it's a supporting role. So I was like, sure, go that way. He's almost felt like an oily snake salesman, which I think works. I think I liked it. This play is, 70, 80 years old. And I love how great plays can still resonate now. The character of Willy Loman, who is basically lying to himself, lying to everyone around him, that he's successful, that things are going well, that his sons are doing really well, and this kind of fake it till you make it idea. And it was really reminded me of some current political figures who use this idea of just saying things the way they want them to be, even though they really aren't. But Willy Loman, he's doing this and it's not working for him. And I found just the contrast of how it is working for some people in modern day. Why is that? I just found a really interesting connection between Willy Loman and current politicians that examines this idea of faking it till you make it, or the dangers of living in this fantasy and not accepting the reality. I think that's really the takeaway. What are the dangers of this? Because ultimately this is a tragedy, and we may find ourselves in a tragedy because we are unwilling to really see things for the truth of what they are, and we're living in this fantasy idea of things how they really are not. So, was I bored? Was I confused? The first act is a slow burn. It's about 70 minutes, and the second act is longer, which is surprising, is about 90 minutes. The first act was a little slow, wasn't bored, but was hanging in there because I knew where we were going. When we got to that second act, that 90 minutes felt like half the time. That's when the shit hits the fan. That's where every scene is dramatic. So I forgive this production for having a slower first act, because when that second act came, I was riveted. We flew through that. You don't realize that it's a 3-hour play. That second act starts and you are on a roller coaster ride. So I just love that. Was I confused? After I adjusted to this unusual set and the anachronistic nature of the car and the columns and all that, once I adjusted to that, I was pretty much into the play and just focusing on the acting and the performances. There was one slight confusion, and I don't know if anyone has talked about this, but I felt like Biff and Happy had kind of a working class New York accent. I don't know if it was Brooklyn or Bronx or what, but sounded like, you know, these guys I hear in the streets of New York. Whereas I felt Nathan Lane and Laurie Metcalf, who sometimes they'll add accents and things, they did not have those accents. So that was a little bit of a confusion. I was like, why are the kids sounding different? Because I think kids tend to sound like their parents, right? I know I sound like mine. Raised in Texas, do I sound like it? No, I sound like Midwest, which is where my parents are from. And just the little bit of confusion of the younger guys. I love the choice that they were willing to spend the money on this, but it took me a second to get Happy and Biff lined up with the younger versions, which wouldn't have happened if they were just playing themselves. Okay, so, but I was fine with that choice. I thought it actually gave us other positive things. Let's wrap this up. I think this is a very good production of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. I think it puts the play in a different light, especially with the casting of the young guys. Gives us a different take on the story than we may have seen. So for the performances alone, for the 4 Lomans, I mean, all the actors are great, but specifically those scenes with the family, it's really good chemistry held together by Laurie Metcalf, who's never a disappointment. So I would say go see it for that. Keep in mind that Scott Rudin produced this, and if you don't want to support things that he has produced, then don't go see it. You have been warned. Or see if you can have a friend sneak you in. So if you do want to buy a ticket, there are $49 tickets on the telecharge lottery, and there are $45 rush tickets, which I don't know where they are. If you got $45 in-person rush tickets, let me know where you sat. And that goes for the lottery tickets as well. If you decide to go see Death of a Salesman, let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye.
I wanna drift away, wanna stay inside the play, keep me engaged, keep me amused with what's in front of me, 'cause I don't wanna be bored and confused.